Good afternoon. My name is Don German, and I'm the plant manager here at U.S. Steel Mon Valley Works, home of around 3,000 employees across the Mon Valley, and I'm the plant manager for Irvin Works. And I really wanted to talk to you about eagles, and really, believe me, I am no eagle expert. I would say that I'm more of an eagle advocate, and I'm really the project of what we have behind you when we set up the education program. We set up our eagle camera here at the Irvin plant. Before we started going into some questions, I really wanted to tell you a little brief history about U.S. Steel and also about our resident eagles, Irvin and Claire. So the Mon Valley and Irvin plant was built in 1938, and as I said, there's about 850 men and women that work here at our facility, and we make steel for mostly appliance, but really a lot of other commodities that are used throughout the country. And I'll tell you the way that this happened, and it's awesome that America's iconic bird took resident really on our company that is really mined, melted, and made in America. So we have a sense of pride, and we wanted to share this with the community and quite frankly with the world. So how this all came about, in 2019, Irvin and Claire made a nest down on the Monongahela River. And I should start with that. So this nest is about 12 and a half miles from the point, or from downtown Pittsburgh. The Monongahela runs down through. We have this nest was built in 2019. Our eagles, Irvin and Claire, laid their first eaglet in 2020. That was named USS-1. In 2021, we had two successful eaglets fledged. That would have been USS-2 and USS-3. And then here in 2022, we have USS-4 and USS-5 that you can see behind me. And so in last year, my workers came to me and said, "Hey, do you know we have eagles on plant property?" And I said, "Well, no, I didn't know that, and that's awesome." And so, first thing I thought of was, how do we go about getting a camera? How do we share this with the community? How do we go about, doing that? So I reached out to PicCams, which is if you're familiar with the Hayes Eagle family, they worked there and put a camera at their facility. And the first thing that Bill from PicCam says is, "Well, you got to get a permit." And I'm like, okay. So I filed a permit with the Game Commission, and a part of the filing that permit, it was an 8-page permit on, you have to have an education program. You have to have, where's the camera going to be located? You're only allowed to go near the nest between October and November because that's the time that the least amount of eagle activity. And so, I started down that path, and sure enough, we were granted that permit through the Game Commission. And really, in Pennsylvania, there's only 3 active cameras. There's one run by the Game Commission in Harrisburg. There's the well-known Hayes Eagles that are in Hayes, Pennsylvania, and then there's the U.S. Steel Eagle camera that's located on the Mon in West Mifflin, Dravosburg, Pennsylvania. So we're very proud, to have Irvin and Claire, which is named after our plants, Irvin Works, and Clairton after the Clairton Works, which is only 0.8 miles upstream from our nest and from my plant. And so this is the third successful nesting period. So when I say that I'm not an expert, but I am a protege or a prime example of learning everything that I could over the last year, and we really wanted to share that. But behind me are the eagle experts. So you can go on to our U.S. Steel, onto YouTube, U.S. Steel Bald Eagle camera. There's an active chat. Anybody that's in blue, you see BDev, Eagle Streamer, and so forth, our CValo. They will answer any questions that you have, and really that's what I did and really learned from those experts. So I just wanted to have this platform and be able to share the knowledge, and it's so much knowledge about these beautiful creatures that really wanted to be able to share with you. So some of the things that people want to know right off the bat. And so I'll just talk a little bit and then we'll open it up for the chat. A question I get all the time is, when do eagles get their white heads? And a lot of people think that, oh, well, they're born with it. Well, they're not. So my assistant here is going to go ahead and go to the screen with the nope, the other one. Yep. So if you look here on the screen, and hopefully you can see that, she's going to blow it up. So in the first year, and we call them juveniles, they look like they're black, right? So almost like a crow, almost like a hawk type of a thing. Then after a year and a half, you'll start to see some white coming into the head. After 2.5, same thing, a little bit more. 3.5, a lot more white that's coming in. And then in the fourth year, 4.5, you'll start to see, and this is where Irvin was in 2019, 2020 timeframe. So based on 3 years of nesting, we believe that Irvin, our male eagle, is about 7.5 to 8 years old. And Claire, she was more mature. She already had her very white, distinct head, and she is probably more mature, so over eight years old in age. So we're going to go back to the live screen again, and I'm going to take this off here. So our camera, so the first thing we ended up doing was we ran power down to the camera. So this nest is about 100 yards from my on-plant property. It is nested in a sycamore tree located on the Mon River. The nest is located probably about 60 feet up in the air. And like I said, you can only put a camera up in the time frame of October to November time frame. So once we got the permit, it was all forward, and we had to run power down there. So this camera in particular from PicCams that we partnered with, it can zoom, pan, it has sound. Because we were able to run it through our US Steel networking and cybersecurity, we were able to get it and stream it at 1440p, so it's high definition. And it's also, since it's powered, we have it running 24/7, so you can go onto this camera at any time and watch our eagles in action. So I'm going to take the first questions. We actually had some questions from US Steel that we're going to, I'll be able to answer, and then hopefully that'll open up some more. So one of the questions from Aaron DiPietro was, does the eagles live in the nest year-round, or do they migrate to and from? Well, that's actually a two-part question. So actually, a lot of people think that you're going to be living in the nest, and that's not the case. The nest is strictly for eggs. It's strictly for hatching, growing the eaglets, fledging, what you're seeing, and branching that you're seeing behind me now, and then for the flight. Typically, birds will perch the whole time, so they'll perch in these branches and so forth, but they only use the nest for the eggs. So the question, do they stay in this area? The answer is yes. I guess it really depends on as long as for necessity, right? So as long as there's food, which the Monongahela has over 70 species of fish. And I will tell you that Irvin likes and Claire loves trout. They typically bring in bass, suckers, but a lot of fish. But there's 70 species of fish that's in the area. And so as long as that's plentiful, they'll be staying here. And typically the Hayes and the US Steel Eagles do stay in the area. So another question from US Steel, and that is, what's the lifespan of an eagle? So we already talked about that. An eagle will get to about 4 years before it's mature enough to start to mate, find its mate. But actually, the average life of a bald eagle is anywhere from 20 to 25 years, right? And in actuality, the longest in captivity is 48 years old, and the longest or oldest in the wild is 38 years old. So great question, but they live for a very long time. Another question that came in was, do they mate for life? Or are they monogamous? Yes, they are. So typically the eagles will find their mate, like Irvin and Claire, and they'll stay together as forever, as long as something doesn't happen to the other mate. If something happens, then yes, they will try to find another spouse. But typically, yes, they are mates for life. Okay, question. What question came in? What happened to the owl? That's where we're bothering the eagles. So typically, eagles are the top of the food chain. However, we did have a pesky owl, a great horned owl, that came in, and they typically come, at night, as you know, for owls, and Irvin and Claire were in the process of, this was before eggs, but they were in the process of nestoration, we call it, and bringing branches and so forth in. And an owl or great horned owl typically does not make their own nest. They steal nests. So the concern was, we happened to see in, I believe it was early January, a great horned owl come in, and it's sort of like, I want to say Goldilocks, came in, sat in a nest, snuggled in, was there for about 5 minutes. And I think that was one of the things we learned by having our camera 24/7 and being able to watch at night. I got all kind of calls saying, hey, there was a great horned owl. It was there for 5 minutes, and then she sort of left and went off. About 7 days later, she came back in again, snuggled in, looking, and there was a huge concern that this owl was going to try to take over our nest. And really, the great horned owl will actually lay their eggs a little bit earlier than, especially with our younger pair. We did not lay our eggs until, you see it flapping back there, until February 27th. So they lay their eggs, earlier February. So there was a big concern that that they were going to maybe steal the nest. So my guys, carpenter shop, we ended up going and Eagle Streamer, who's one of our experts, Wendy, came up with the idea of, hey, well, maybe if we build a mock nest. And so I said, absolutely. What do we do? The dimensions are 22 inches by 22 inches. We filled it with sticks, we filled it with grass, and then we got a bucket truck. We put it up 40 feet up in the air. And typically a great horned owl's range is about a half of a mile. And so we put those strategically out in the plant to try and avoid the owl taking over the nest. So the owl never came back, although I will tell you that on the one scare we did have, poor Claire was sitting on, actually was this branch over here, and the owl came in at 40 miles an hour and knocked poor Claire off of the branch. But she, as a strong steel worker, she was back on that branch the next day at noon, and she perched on that branch the next night. And so we had the boxes up. We never did see the owls again, and here we are. So another question, let's see, is when will the eaglets leave the nest? So so that's a great question. So really, if you take a look, it's usually about 80 days is the short answer. It's anywhere from 70 days to 100 days after hatch. So if you think about it, we laid Claire did. I didn't do anything. Claire laid her first egg on February 27th. She laid her second egg, and we can talk about that here in a second, on March 3rd. The incubation period is 35 days at 99 degrees. So the hatch for us was on April 5th and April 8th. And then from that date, the first 30 days, it's all about growing, eating, and developing. And I believe the eaglet, the very first 7 days, will grow 500%. I believe it comes out at like 3 ounces, and by the first 7 days, it's almost a pound. And so that so the first 30 days is that. The next 30 days is really growing the feathers and starting to, develop, also growing, but growing their feathers. And then you hit about 70 days. Right now we're at 75, I believe, in 78 days, somewhere around there. And you can see that they're what we call branching. So right now, this is actually USS 5 that's up on top. and this here is USS 4 that's just sitting there watching and waiting. But USS 5 up top is what we call branching, and it's really going up top, and they're going to make short jumps from here to here, here to there, and it's really the starting out and the start and landing, and they're really trying to master that before they take what we would call full fledged. Probably right now we're about 2 weeks away. So if you tune in for the next 2 weeks, you're going to see. Looks like my focus went out here for the them doing the branching and so forth. So, great question. So another question came in. So it's can you tell the gender of is it the egg or the eagles? So I guess that's a two-part question. I cannot tell the difference, or you cannot tell a gender for the eaglets. However, typically I would say let's answer it this way. An eagle's weight in North America here, or northern part of America, is about anywhere from 10 to 14 pounds, right? And typically the female, because she's doing all the work with birth and eggs and so forth, she's a little bit bigger. So typically when you see Irvin and Claire in the nest, Irvin is a little bit smaller, slick eagle, and Claire is a little bit bigger eagle. Also, Claire has more of our eagle has more of a mohawk type of a cool hairdo. And then you also find some cool things, like Irvin, in his right eye, in his iris, there's a little black spot. And this camera is so good that I can zoom in and be able to see that spot. So we know that that's Irvin. And also Irvin has a little bit of black around his both eyes, almost like mascara. But whenever he comes in, if you see that, you can tell that, oh, he just branched again. You can tell that it's the male. So I got another one. So do they return to the nest every year? And if so, when will they come back each year? So as I said earlier, these are eagles, typically stay here. Now, if you're talking about the eaglets, so let's answer it that way. Do the eaglets come back? Actually, once the eaglets fledge, they'll now it's all about flying, and for the next 4 years, it's all about survival. So they're really trying to make it through the winters, and they can fly, I think, records of 2,000 miles, and they'll just fly away. Now typically they will come back about at the 3-4 year time frame, and at that point, at 4 years, now they're looking for their mate because they're mature enough that they can reproduce. So that's whenever they'll be anywhere from 100 nest to 150 miles from here. So I get a lot of questions on chat. Hey, do you think that Irvin's gonna, or U.S. Steel Eagles will mate with, the Hayes? Well, it's very possible, but typically, they'll find, within 100 miles. So it's very possible they'll be down on the Yacht, or they'll be, up at Ohio Powell or someplace. So another question came in. So what is their wingspan? That's a great question. So really big. So anywhere from 5.9, I guess 6 foot you'd say, to close to 7.5 feet long. So an eagle's wingspan is massive. Actually, when you look at the juvies, and if hopefully Irvin and Claire come in to bring a fish in for them that you'll be able to see, but when you look at the juvies, they actually look a little bit bigger than what the mom and dad look like. And that's mainly because, think of it as training wheels on a bike. Their feathers are a little bit longer, a little bit bigger, so that they can master the flight. And then as they molt, those feathers will come out with regular, feathers that'll come in that's for more mature as they get older. Okay, so maybe the next question is what is nestoration? So it's really so a typical nest, right? Whenever that you see behind us, that's here, and imagine they do that all with their talons, right, to bring in this stick, and then move it strategically with their beak. So amazing. an eagle can lift, if I told you before, they're anywhere from 10 to 14 pounds. They can lift about 1/3 of their weight. So they're going to bring in, if they bring in a big stick or if they bring in a fish or whatever they're bringing in, depending on the distance and depending on if they're starting up high, coming down low, a lot of times they'll fly in, grab the stick, and then take off with it, and bring it into the nest. So nestoration starts, it can start in September really, but typically it depends on the maturity of the nest, right? A nest that's been there for 10 years might not need as many sticks as a new nest like ours. So typically, and again, our moderators, they keep track how many sticks did Irvin bring in, how many sticks did Claire bring in, and typically an eagle will bring in anywhere from 300 to 400 sticks. And so when they bring those in, and they call that nestoration because it's just after these eaglets leave, the nest is kind of messed up, so they'll bring it in and they'll get what they call a rail around the nest just to protect the eaglets. So the nest is typically about 4 foot by 4 foot by 4 foot thick. The largest nest ever recorded, I believe, is 2 ton, so 4,000 pounds, and that's in Florida that was recorded. Can't estimate. I'm saying this nest is probably close to 500 pounds. I mean, it's big. It's been there for like I said, for 4 years. So that's the nestoration part. Another question. So let's see. So how fast do they dive to get fish? That is a great question. So typically, I want to say it's about 75 miles. I know the peregrines can go up to over 100 miles an hour. Typically, that the speed wise that they typically flies, I believe it's 35 to 40 miles an hour when they're in mid-flight and so forth. And when they dive, they're coming in at the river, for fish is, it's some, I think it's 75 miles per hour or higher. Another one was how do they choose the location of the nest? I believe. Oh, so what? Let me go with this. So you saw back there, old 4 here. She's or he is. That's called winger size. So basically, once they get their full wings or full feathers, now it's all about exercising that wings and getting ready so that it can do that branch and so that it can take that flight. So a lot of times, what you'll see is they'll get up and they'll start, doing their what we call winger size, but it's just really exercising their wings. And so far, this is 5 that's up there. Like I said, I think its first branch was on Friday of last week. 4 has, but you see the jumping. So again, it's practicing its takeoff, and then once it gets up into the tree, then it's trying to understand and get those feet and get the feel of it, right? So so how they choose a location of the nest, it really comes down to, I always think that they do it on a bend so they can look upriver and downriver. But it's got to be, they choose a nest. It's typically, near food source, right? So as long as they can, have easy access, and, go down and, with the Monongahela, we have over 70 species of fish. So the water's pristine, the air's pristine. One of the things when we teamed up with pick cams, they have on this, I told you we also have sound, so you could go to this site and you can turn it up and you'll hear them squawking and so forth. But one of the things we did was there's an app that's out there that tells how many birds, and if it says you hear a certain, it might say it's a red cardinal, you might hear it might say it's a blue jay. Well, on our camera, it said that there were over 80 different species of birds within the area flying around, that was able to identify in the area, which is phenomenal. So it just goes to show all the the men and women that work at U.S. Steel and their stewardship to the environment, and what better than to say that we have eagles on plant property, and actually at our Clairton facility we have a peregrine falcon. So if you take a look, we have two protected raptors that are on plant property is pretty amazing. So so one came in, which birds are cooler, the U.S. Steel Eagles or the Clairton Works Peregrine Falcons? Well, I don't think I need to tell you what the answer is. I think they're both pretty cool. I think that I got to see some great upshot. Oh, here we go. So coming in, so that's Irvin. You could tell right away by his dark eyes, and if I could zoom in on it, you can see it almost looks like it has mascara. So that is our male. He's about 7.5, 8 years old. You can tell that because of his, when he first came, he had some more black that was in here. That was 4 years ago. So another interesting fact is the beak. So the very first thing that grows on the eaglets as they're grown is their big orange, feet, and so they look like clown feet, which is pretty cool. But not only do they not get their white head for 4 years, they also don't get their full orange beak until 4 years. So they are raptors, right? So I've seen a lot of people ask, what have they brought in? So I've seen fish. We've had waterfowl, ducks. We've had rabbit. We've had squirrel. So they do bring in meat, but most of the times those are probably they've stole it off of another animal, or maybe it's roadkill or something to that effect that they're bringing in. So okay, so one of the questions was, how can I see them close up? So really, that's why I got the camera. So my whole goal for this was to really, share this with the community, with the world, and be able to, this magnificent creature, to see it in its habitat. So there's really no safe place to view those near our nest, because you have 837 that is, well, there's railroad tracks that are right below the nest. There's the 837 main road that goes by, and then there's the river. So the easiest, or I guess the place to look at would be across from across the river, which would be over in Glassport, would be the place to you'd be able to view our eagles. So well, I guess that's all we have for today, and I really appreciate everybody tuning in. And like I said, I'm by no means eagle expert. Please go on to our website, U.S. Steel. You go on to ussteel.com, but you could also go to YouTube, pull up U.S. Steel Bald Eagle. Please go on there and ask the true experts, and any questions, they'll have the right answer for you. So really appreciate it, and hopefully we'll get to see USS 4. Oh, there's USS 5 just came down and looks like wants to eat. So that's all I have. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Thank you. Have a great day.